In the quieter moments away from the bright studio lights, the real story played out behind closed doors and away from prying eyes. Private struggles colored each chapter of his life, creating a sharp contrast to the persona audiences thought they knew. Friends would talk about his sharp sense of humor, turning suddenly to silence when conversation drifted to matters of the heart. More than anyone suspected, his relationships carried an undercurrent of longing and regret, choices made, and paths abandoned. Throughout years of fame, he pushed away connections that threatened to break through his carefully guarded reserve. Yet one relationship always stood apart as something different, one that kept resurfacing in his memory like a bittersweet refrain. Even those who worked closely at his side would notice the hints of certain wistfulness, a shift in his eyes when her name was mentioned, an old photograph buried in a drawer. Despite a world that celebrated his every joke, he was haunted by what he called his great mistake, by the absence of a woman who, he would finally admit, was the love of his life. Stories swapped over late-night drinks or whispered in the wings hinted at a romance complicated by circumstance. Timing never right, priorities elsewhere, pride getting in the way. Years went by, and other partners came and went, none able to match the mark she left on him. Deep down, the laughter became both armor and distraction, protecting a soft underbelly marked by loss and longing. All this time, what mattered most had slipped through his grasp, and only in rare, unguarded moments did he let the truth slip, or allow anyone to see past the charming smile, revealing the depth of what could never be fully recovered. Later in life, Johnny Carson was known to millions for his quick wit and charm, but his journey began in a far different place. Born on October 23, 1925, in Corning, Iowa, Johnny's early life was unsettled. His family moved several times through Iowa before finally making their home in Norfolk, Nebraska. Amid so much change, Johnny found something constant in his interest in magic. At just 12, he picked up a magician's kit and was hooked. Eager to impress, he started dazzling family members and friends with his growing collection of tricks, forever chasing that spark of surprise in their eyes. Magic became more than a hobby. He spent long hours practicing sleight of hand, studying every move, and making sure he could both amuse and fool his audience. Inspired by famous magicians he read about, young Johnny was eager to master the art of misdirection and showmanship, finding joy in captivating those around him. As he got older, his talent stretched beyond card tricks and coins. He began to discover the joy in making people laugh and telling stories, shaping his skills in comedy and timing. Even as a teenager in small-town Nebraska, he had a knack for holding attention, delivering a joke just right, and knowing when to pause for the laugh. Those early performances, whether at home or for friends, set the groundwork for all that would follow. No one could have guessed that a boy performing simple tricks in Nebraska would go on to transform television and entertainment. But Johnny Carson's early love for magic and entertaining was the spark that kindled a legendary career. As World War II raged overseas, Johnny Carson was only 18, yet he joined the United States Navy in 1943 like so many others of his age. Trained to be a communications officer, he found himself stationed on the USS Pennsylvania until the war ended. During those years, Carson never saw active combat, but his time in uniform was about more than military routines. While serving, he came to realize that he could lift spirits with more than just Navy discipline. Through magic tricks and impromptu comedy routines, he quickly became a favorite among his fellow sailors. Whenever there was downtime, his performances brought much-needed relief and laughter to the crew, creating moments of escape from the daily anxieties of war. His talent for comedy and showmanship was impossible to ignore, drawing crowds of eager shipmates who anticipated every act. The entertainment he provided wasn't just a way to pass the time. Carson was learning how to sense the mood of those around him, adapting his jokes and tricks depending on how the audience responded. This ability to read the room and keep people focused on his performance, even during difficult times, helped him shape a unique comedic rhythm and stage presence. These skills, forged under the unique challenges of military service, laid a foundation for his future in entertainment. As others struggled with the weight of war, Carson's gift brought light into darkness, proving that laughter could thrive even amidst uncertainty. After the war, these early lessons followed him, guiding his path as he entered the world of show business, equipped with a rare knack for captivating an audience that few could match. After leaving the military, Johnny Carson focused his energy on re-entering civilian life, with a clear ambition to work in entertainment. He enrolled at the University of Nebraska, at first thinking he would study journalism. Quickly, though, He found performance was where his heart truly led him, so he switched his major to speech and drama. This change shaped his future. College was a place where Carson did far more than study. It became his training ground. He devoted countless hours to mastering the craft of comedy. Besides academics, he filled his spare time with local performances, still fascinated by magic. Even for as little as 25 a show, he would perform magic acts in small venues. These early gigs may not have brought him much financially, but to Carson, they meant everything. They gave him the chance to try out new material, sharpen his sense of timing, and learn how to read a crowd's reactions. What really made him stand out during these years was his sharp wit and ability to make jokes land at just the right moment. He focused on understanding what made a joke funny, testing out delivery techniques, and learning how to keep an audience hooked. His academic work in comedy writing let him see the mechanics behind laughter. By the time Carson finished his university studies in 1949, he had created a solid foundation as a performer and writer. The confidence and stage skills learned at Nebraska, plus the lessons in comedy he put into practice almost nightly, would eventually propel him forward in show business. Long before he became a television icon, his real education came from classrooms and dimly lit stages where the seeds of his legendary career were carefully planted and nurtured. Even as Johnny Carson was making his first moves into show business in 1948, he tied himself to Jody Walcott, the woman who had been his support through his college years. On the outside, their partnership looked like a storybook romance. Jody, bright and loyal, seemed like the perfect match for Johnny's drive and talent. As the years passed, the challenges built up. The couple faced serious money problems while Johnny was still fighting for a foothold in radio and television. Jody managed the household and encouraged him, hoping for a more stable future together. Together, they had 3 sons, Chris, Ricky, and Corey. Still, fame didn't bring happiness. As Johnny's name started to appear in brighter lights, the world of late-night television introduced new pressures. He spent longer hours away from home, caught up in the fast-paced rhythm of Hollywood, where parties and temptations were everywhere. That new lifestyle began to pull Johnny away from his family. Accusations surfaced from Jody about Johnny's unfaithfulness, and the trust that had once held their marriage together started to crumble. The strain grew too heavy to ignore. By 1963, the marriage ended in divorce, leaving Jody heartbroken. She had stood by Johnny for years, braving long nights of uncertainty and worry, only to watch their life together fall apart, just as he was reaching the peak of his career. The end of this marriage brought lasting sadness for Jody, and it left a mark on Johnny too. From there on, the personal side of his life remained filled with broken romances and marriages that never lasted. Despite his quick wit on stage and his charming image on the screen, his real life was complicated, shaped by the pain and disappointment of his first marriage's collapse. Eventually, Johnny Carson's rise in broadcasting started with an unassuming radio program in Omaha, Nebraska, called The Squirrel's Nest. The show blended local flavor with Carson's unmistakable gift for comedy, quickly gaining popularity among listeners who tuned in to hear his clever jokes and friendly banter each morning. Even in those early days, Carson's humor didn't rely on scripts or rehearsals. Instead, he found laughs by reacting in the moment, charming his audience with a natural style that felt new and engaging. People in Omaha soon recognized his voice and wit, making him a standout personality among local broadcasters. Sensing that he could reach even greater heights, Carson left Nebraska in 1951 and headed for California. There he created Carson Cellar, a comedy program on NXT, a CBS affiliate in Los Angeles. The show ran on a tight budget, but Carson's mix of quirky humor and genuine connection with guests made it memorable. Each episode included offbeat skits and playful improvisation, letting Carson shine as a creative force. Carson Cellar caught the eye of comedy giants like Groucho Marx and Red Skelton. They saw a real promise in Carson's performing style and sensed he would one day become a mainstay on television. The attention from such famous personalities and the steady buzz surrounding his show marked the beginning of Carson's shift from regional favorite to national figure, setting the stage for a distinguished career in entertainment. As Johnny Carson's reputation as a comedic talent grew, he caught the eye of television producers looking for new energy and ideas in the world of broadcasting. He landed his first significant opportunity when he was hired to write for The Red Skelton Show. This job turned out to be much more than just a writing gig, as he found himself working side by side with one of the most famous comic stars of the time. He learned the delicate timing that was needed to make a live audience laugh and picked up on the small details that made television production smooth and entertaining. However, life had an unexpected twist in store for Carson. In 1954, Red Skelton suffered an injury right before a live broadcast. Without much time to prepare, Carson was tapped to step in and host the program. Stepping onto the stage, he handled the show with a calm confidence, never missing a beat. His natural charm and quick wit were on full display as he kept the audience laughing and the program going without a hitch. This remarkable performance revealed his true talents as a host, and not just a creative force behind the scenes. As word spread about his performance, television executives began to see Johnny as more than just a writer. His big break came a few years later when, in 1958, he was chosen to host the game show Who Do You Trust? It was here that his sense of humor and quick thinking truly had a chance to shine, as the game show format required a lively host who could think on his feet. During this time, Carson met Ed McMahon, who became his announcer and lifelong professional partner. Their rapport was effortless, and even from the beginning, it was clear this team had something special that kept audiences tuning in. The success of Who Do You Trust brought Carson widespread attention across the country, and his growing popularity put him in line for even bigger opportunities that would eventually define a new era of late-night television. Eventually, the fast rise of Johnny Carson's career in the early 1960s seemed to match a glamorous personal life. When he married Joanne Copeland in 1963, their public appearances painted a picture of Hollywood success. Joanne captured attention with her elegance, and always appeared by Carson's side at major events, making them seem like a perfect couple. However, as time went on, cracks started to show beneath that polished exterior. Carson's television career demanded relentless hours, leaving him exhausted and often away from home. The constant spotlight and the endless parade of industry parties made Joanne weary. At first, she enjoyed the excitement and glitz of being married to a celebrity, but the situations quickly grew overwhelming. The pressure of maintaining an image for the cameras never seemed to subside, and Joanne started to feel the strain. Carson, under stress from work, sometimes became unpredictable in his moods. Arguments grew more frequent, and jealousy crept into their relationship. The relentless scrutiny of the paparazzi added more fuel to their private battles, and the romance that once brought them together slowly faded. By the late 1960s, their connection dwindled, and the couple drifted apart, often living separate lives even though the public still saw them together. Despite efforts to keep things together, the marriage could not survive the constant pressures, and by 1972, it officially ended in divorce. Joanne received a generous settlement, and what had seemed a fairy tale match came undone, another casualty of the demands and complications that came with Carson's Hollywood fame. Stepping into the national spotlight in 1962, Johnny Carson began a journey that transformed late-night television. Taking over after Jack Paar, Carson faced a daunting challenge, but his graceful charm and quick wit reshaped The Tonight Show completely. Audiences responded almost instantly to his relaxed, genuine connection with guests, and his subtle humor, which often diffused tension and brought out personal stories. Carson seemed to put everyone at ease, from established entertainers to those appearing on television for the first time. He guided conversations with curiosity and warmth, creating television moments that felt spontaneous and real, making viewers feel as if they were right in the studio. The magic went beyond just making people laugh. It was about Carson's open approach, which encouraged honesty and vulnerability. In this atmosphere, many talented performers found their big break. Over the next 3 decades, Carson not only entertained millions but also introduced future legends, giving early exposure to David Letterman, Jay Leno, George Carlin, and Joan Rivers. His reach didn't stop at laughter. His influence touched the entire shape and spirit of late-night television, making The Tonight Show an essential nightly tradition in homes across the country. Carson's style became the model, or gold standard, by which later hosts measured themselves, and the impact of his innovation is still visible on television screens long after his retirement. Even today, his blend of conversation, comedy, and humanity is remembered as a defining era in American entertainment. Despite being known for making people laugh, Johnny Carson was more than just a teller of jokes. He perfected moments that felt spontaneous and real, drawing laughter not only from the lines themselves, but from how he set the stage. Audiences trusted him to be funny without being cruel, which is why so many different people felt at home watching him each night. Carson's real gift was reading people, and the crowd, always able to sense when a gentle tease would work better than a big punchline, and using timing so sharp that every pause seemed like part of the act. Recurring characters became a trademark, and none stood out more than Karnak the Magnificent, a Swami who claimed to sense mysterious answers simply by holding envelopes to his head. The way Carson played Karnak made the act lovable, with silly answers and quips that added an extra layer to the show's fun. Just as memorable was Aunt Blabby, the no-nonsense, talkative old woman who doled out advice that was as funny as it was ridiculous. By slipping into these roles, Carson showed he could transform himself completely, moving nimbly from bit to bit, and keeping the show fresh. Meanwhile, his comedy was never one note. He often balanced wit with kindness, shifting gears when conversations turned serious, showing he could handle important interviews with care. Whether enjoying light-hearted banter with a fellow comedian or helping the country cope with difficult moments on live television, Carson's presence anchored the evening. His skill in mixing silliness and seriousness set a new standard for anyone who followed him, cementing a reputation as the king of late-night entertainment. For most people, Johnny Carson was the face of late-night television, a host who made millions laugh with his effortless humor and confident wit. Yet behind the scenes, Carson's sharp tongue didn't always lead to good-natured laughter. One well-known example of the trouble his comedy could cause involved his feud with entertainer Wayne Newton. Carson, who celebrated poking fun at celebrities, used his show to tell a string of jokes about Newton, singling him out, and often implying he was gay. While many in the audience took it as typical late-night banter, Newton didn't. The joke struck him as personal and deeply insulting, turning what started as television comedy into a real-world tension. As Carson continued with the remarks even after Newton's clear discomfort became known, Newton reached his breaking point. Frustrated by what he felt was an attack on his masculinity, Newton made a bold move that took their feud from the stage to the backstage. He marched into Carson's office in a rare and dramatic confrontation, making it clear that the mockery was not to continue. The encounter was intense and left Carson visibly rattled, revealing the consequences of comedy that stepped too far over personal lines. Even though this conflict with Newton was among the most dramatic, it was hardly unique in Carson's long career. His style of humor, while winning him countless fans, also brought moments of genuine backlash from those who found themselves on the receiving end of his jokes. Carson's approach wasn't about starting fights, but his quick wit sometimes sparked real anger among his targets. Nonetheless, Carson's reign over late-night television remained firm, and his sometimes risky jokes rarely did lasting damage to his standing with audiences. The balancing act between fearless comedy and personal offense was always present in Carson's work, shaping an era where the laughter on stage sometimes hid real drama behind the scenes. Throughout his career, Johnny Carson displayed an incredible knack for bringing politics into his comedy in a way that felt both natural and highly entertaining. Audiences from all walks of life tuned in every night, knowing they would hear Carson's take on the latest political news and events, especially during turbulent times like the Nixon administration. His monologues became so much more than just jokes. They turned into a daily digest of topical events, all filtered through his quick wit and trademark delivery. Carson had a way of poking fun at politicians without seeming mean-spirited or aligned with any one side, which made his humor feel accessible and safe for viewers no matter what they believed. During the Watergate scandal, his jokes about Richard Nixon and the secret tapes turned into cultural touchstones, instantly becoming part of everyday conversation across the country. Even as he delivered biting observations, Carson managed to hold leaders accountable in a way that felt more like a gentle nudge than a pointed attack, making his satire comfortable and widely accepted. Unlike modern comedians who openly pick sides, Carson's focus on neutrality allowed people to laugh even in tense times, and many remember how his humor united households at the dinner table. His commitment was always to entertainment, never activism or journalism, yet the power of his nightly show meant that his words carried weight, shaping opinions and capturing the mood of the nation. This rare ability helped Carson earn many of television's most prestigious awards, including numerous Emmys, Peabody Awards, and even the Governor's Award, solidifying his influence in both comedy and cultural history. Everyone knew Carson wasn't trying to change minds or push an agenda. He was there to make people laugh, even when the news itself felt overwhelming. His approach kept millions coming back to his show night after night, making his jokes and observations about politicians a beloved and essential part of American life. Even though television offered Johnny Carson unmatched fame, he chose to remain loyal to the late-night format, even when Hollywood wanted him for major films. Producers admired his humor and presence, thinking those qualities would translate well on the big screen. Carson was not swayed. He preferred the rhythm and security of television, steering clear of the unpredictable world of movies. This commitment defined Carson's career and changed television's landscape. When he moved The Tonight Show from New York to Los Angeles in 1972, he did more than change addresses. The shift helped crown Los Angeles as the new center of television entertainment, fueling Hollywood's reputation beyond movies. The move signaled a turning point, making California not just the home of film, but now the center of America's most influential television stage. Carson's power allowed him to shape his own working life. As popularity climbed, he set new standards in contract negotiation, winning rights that other TV hosts could only dream about. He gained full creative control over The Tonight Show, allowing him to shape what Americans laughed at night after night. He also secured a high salary and negotiated for time off, choosing not to work Mondays. Guest hosts would take his place, and this platform often launched new stars. Carson's agreement allowed him to earn plenty while enjoying unmatched freedom for a TV host. He chose each day on his own terms, while still leading late-night TV ratings, showing business sense as sharp as his wit. He changed not just where late-night TV was filmed, but how its stars lived and worked, all while proving he was as much a master negotiator as an entertainer, giving him lasting influence on the industry itself. Suddenly in 1972, Johnny Carson's third marriage took everyone by surprise. He married Joanna Holland in a low-key ceremony that was nothing like his earlier, headline-grabbing nuptials. From the start, it seemed as if Johnny wanted this relationship to be different. He mostly kept Joanna out of the spotlight, possibly searching for something steadier and more genuine than before. At first, those close to them noticed how Joanna embraced her role as the wife of America's most famous late-night host. She adapted to his high-profile world and seemed eager to make things work. Despite those hopeful beginnings, old problems soon crept in. Johnny threw himself into his television career, hardly taking a break from his demanding schedule. Offstage, his struggle with drinking and his ongoing trouble with staying faithful created new cracks in their marriage. While thrill-seekers across the country stayed up to watch Carson's sharp wit, each night, Joanna began to feel the emotional gap that others at home rarely saw. Behind closed doors, his legendary humor often gave way to distance. Even though millions adored him, Johnny remained hard to reach, guarded, and private in his own home. Over more than 10 years together, the stress and disappointment added up. Joanna, once hopeful and willing to compromise, eventually became worn out by the same challenges that had ended Johnny's earlier marriages. When she finally filed for divorce in 1983, the separation attracted attention due to the size of the settlement. The agreement was one of Hollywood's costliest, forcing Johnny to let go of millions of dollars. Through it all, he stayed mostly silent and stoic in public, betraying little of his thoughts or feelings. By that time, broken relationships had become almost a familiar pattern for Carson. He seemed to accept that his search for lasting love would, yet again, come up short. After 3 marriages that ended in heartbreak, Johnny Carson stepped into an entirely different chapter when he married Alexis Maas in 1987. For Carson, who had spent over 30 years navigating the ups and downs of both fame and relationships, this final union brought a peace he had seldom known. Alexis, 27 years his junior, did not chase the spotlight or court Hollywood circles. Instead, she preferred the comfort of quiet evenings and time spent away from crowds. Friends noticed that this retreat from public life seemed to settle something in Carson. He traded the demands of The Tonight Show and the glare of cameras for nights in Malibu's calm, and Alexis was happy to be right there beside him. Their wedding reflected their changing priorities, kept out of the public's eye, and marked by an intimacy that contrasted sharply with his earlier, more public relationships. The honeymoon, though, was lavish, proof that Carson still liked luxury, even if he now enjoyed it behind closed doors. In these years, his presence on television grew increasingly rare. He kept to himself, far from the relentless swirl of celebrity. Within their home, there was space for quiet conversation, shared laughter, and simple routines. Money still allowed for extravagant comforts, yet Carson seemed to be driven by a wish for authenticity and rest rather than recognition. Even in his final years, with his health declining, Alexis maintained the shield of privacy that Carson valued so greatly. She did not write books or give interviews about their life together after his passing in 2005. Instead, she lived quietly, honoring Carson's wish for a peaceful final act and refusing to cash in on his fame. In the end, it was this deep sense of privacy, fostered by Alexis and embraced by Carson, that marked his ultimate contentment and the profound difference of his last marriage. Despite his genial on-screen persona, Johnny Carson remained intensely private throughout his life. During his decades as the host of The Tonight Show, Carson became a household name and turned his popularity into substantial financial success. By the time he passed away in 2005, his net worth was estimated at around $300 million, making him one of television's highest earners of his time. Unlike other entertainers who struggled with money, Carson managed his finances carefully, keeping control over his earnings through smart investments, savvy contract negotiations, and a focus on securing his financial future. As a result, when his estate was eventually settled, most of his wealth was left to his fourth wife, Alexis Moss, and to his 3 children. However, relationships within his family were complicated, much like Carson himself. Though he was cherished by audiences for his humor and charisma, those close to him knew another side, one that was often quiet, guarded, and sometimes emotionally distant. He rarely let people see behind the curtain, preferring solitude when the cameras stopped rolling. Nevertheless, Carson's legacy shaped late-night television for decades to come, setting the benchmark for those who followed. His influence is not only visible in the talk show format he perfected, but also in the way he turned The Tonight Show into a major institution. He remains an enduring figure in American culture, respected for both his flawless comedic timing and the lasting mark he left on television history. Even though Johnny Carson was the face of The Tonight Show, and one of American television's most recognized stars, his relationship with NBC was full of challenges behind the scenes. Carson did not simply accept the network's decisions. He frequently pushed back against executives on issues like creative choices, how the show was scheduled, and how much say he had in his own program. One of the most significant conflicts came to a head in 1979, when Carson, tired of the demanding 90-minute runtime, decided it was time to leverage his immense popularity. He entered legal negotiations that would not only relieve his personal burden, but change the industry as well. Using his star power, Carson successfully talked NBC into reducing the show to 60 minutes, giving him more free time and a more manageable schedule. Perhaps even more importantly, he secured the rights to own The Tonight Show archives. This was a groundbreaking move, since, up until that point, most television stars did not have lasting control over their recorded work. Carson's archives included decades of interviews, comedy routines, and musical performances, creating a treasure trove of historic television that shaped how people remember entertainment. These shows might have been lost or buried by network decisions, but Carson's insistence preserved a crucial chapter of television's past. The legal victory not only gave Carson personal freedom and future financial security, but also modeled a path for other entertainers looking for greater control. By fighting for these rights, Carson helped change what artists could expect in their contracts. His relationship with NBC, filled with disputes and negotiations, went beyond personal ambition. It ended up protecting the memories of millions of viewers and turning Carson into a business-minded leader, not just a charming host. For years, guest hosts allowed Johnny Carson to take time off from The Tonight Show, while keeping the program at its usual high standards. Among these, Joan Rivers stood out not just for her sharp wit, but also because she was seen as Carson's protege, trusted enough to fill in regularly. Their dynamic partnership captured viewers, with Rivers elevating her career through their association. However, everything changed in 1986, when Rivers accepted an offer to host her own late-night show on Fox. She made the decision without giving Carson advance notice, a choice that struck him deeply. In response, Carson abruptly cut off contact with Rivers. He refused to speak to her again, and barred her from The Tonight Show, effectively shunning her from the late-night circuit. This bitter fallout became legendary in television, and their rift was never resolved. Meanwhile, speculation swirled about who would replace Carson as retirement approached. Though Carson favored David Letterman to take his place, NBC shocked many by naming Jay Leno as his successor. This decision upset those who believed Carson's wishes should have held greater influence, and the appointment led to an intense rivalry between Leno and Letterman that endured for years. Even though Carson chose to remain silent in public, many insiders disclosed his quiet disappointment with how the succession was managed. The close of Carson's time marked not just the end of his own legendary run, but also a turning point in late-night TV. The warm consistency and trusted traditions Carson had built began to give way to a more competitive environment, shaped by new tensions and expectations. Though The Tonight Show had always relied on guest hosts to sustain its momentum during Carson's absences, the drama of the late-night transition and Carson's handling of personal relationships showed just how much the landscape had changed, and how the next era would be defined by both legacy and rivalry. However, in 1992, the entertainment world was shaken when Johnny Carson announced he would retire from The Tonight Show after an incredible 30-year run. Fans and celebrities alike were stunned. Many believed Carson would host forever, his wit and charm as dependable as the turn of a clock. Yet, showing the same poise and control he brought to late night, Carson made it clear the decision was entirely his. As the day of his final show approached, anticipation and emotion grew across the country. The last episode aired on May 22, 1992, and it quickly became one of the most unforgettable moments in television history. People who had grown up watching Carson tuned in, some in disbelief, others nostalgic for all the years they had spent beside him in their living rooms. During the broadcast, famous friends and stars who had laughed with him over the years offered their heartfelt tributes, but nothing could prepare viewers for the show's most stirring moment. Bette Midler, a frequent guest and close friend, performed One for My Baby, directing her song to Carson. The studio, usually filled with laughter and applause, fell into a hush as Carson, known for his steady delivery and quick jokes, grew visibly emotional, his eyes filling with tears. For the first time, audiences truly saw the person behind the laughter, a man preparing to leave the stage not just as a performer, but as a beloved figure whose work had touched millions. His departure brought a genuine feeling that something special was ending. Carson had become more than a talk show host. He was a nightly guest in American households, a trusted voice with his unique mix of humor, grace, and warmth. The moment he said goodbye felt like the closing of a major chapter in entertainment, one that could never quite be repeated. Even though others stepped into his role, the signature magic and effortless charm Carson brought with him were impossible to match, making his final bow a bittersweet memory that lingered long after the applause died down. So as the years stretched on, the difference between the man behind the desk and the man behind closed doors grew wider. In those private moments, recollections of her surfaced unbidden, more persistent as time went by. Sometimes, late at night, he would listen to old songs that reminded him of their time together, letting memories flood his otherwise controlled world. Haunted by what he let slip away, he confided in those rare friends he trusted most, saying she had seen through the walls. He'd buy Lieutenant while he tried to move on, building a life out of countless interviews, laughter, and applause. There remained applause. There remained a quiet ache that never faded. Friends recalled his stories about the time they shared, about the letters he never sent, and words he never said. Some believed he feared vulnerability more than loneliness, so he hid the depth of his feelings behind a quick joke or self-deprecating smile. Meanwhile, she lived her own separate life, always just out of reach, her presence both comforting and painful in his memory. Even small reminders, a shared song, a familiar perfume, could cast a shadow over his day. Eventually, age gave him the courage to admit the truth aloud, but by then it was too late to change the past. Though he was idolized by millions and seemed to have everything, the one thing he wanted most slipped through his fingers. The echo of her laughter lingered long after the cameras stopped rolling, the audience disappeared, and the studio lights died down, hinting at the softer side of a man few ever truly